January 24th, 1944. Central Ukraine. The land looks flat on a map, but in winter it is not flat at all. It is a broken skin of gullies, frozen orchards, low ridgelines, villages tucked behind windbreaks, and roads that turn from hard ice to sucking mud in the space of a single afternoon. That is exactly the kind of ground where an encirclement is born, not with one dramatic stroke, but with a sequence of small breakthroughs that begin to join together like seams tearing open. At first, the German line still feels like a line. Outposts report Soviet probes, artillery answers, staff officers draw arrows and calculate reserves. But the Soviet winter offensive is not probing for information anymore. It is probing for separation. It is looking for the places where a division boundary is thin, where a road junction can be taken, where a river crossing can be seized before engineers can blow it. And when it finds those places, it does not pause to admire success. It pushes through, widens the cut, and drives deeper until the cut becomes a gap, and the gap becomes a corridor, and the corridor becomes a ring. That ring, in late January, begins to form around the German forces near Korsun and Cherkasy. Inside of the corps, roughly, along with attachments, stragglers, rear services, wounded men, and all the clutter of an army that has been fighting for months without a clean rear area. The names on the orders are crisp. The reality on the ground is not. Units are under strength. Companies are fused together from survivors. Some battalions have the name of a regiment, but the strength of a platoon. Horses are still hauling guns because trucks are dead from lack of fuel or broken axles. Ammunition is counted in hours, not days. The pocket does not announce itself like a headline. The soldiers learn it the way soldiers always learn it, by noticing what stops arriving. Rations shorten, mail stops. The rumor begins to spread that the road behind them is gone. Then somebody comes in from a patrol and says the village to the rear has Soviet tanks in it. Then a staff car arrives with an officer who will not say the word encirclement, but his face says it for him. The Soviet commanders understand that an encirclement is only half a victory. The other half is preventing the enemy from breaking out or being relieved. So they build the rings, an inner ring that squeezes the pocket, and an outer ring that faces west and blocks any German attempt to punch in. They do it with rifle divisions digging in along likely routes, with anti-tank guns sighted at road bends, with artillery registered on open fields, with tanks held back for counterattacks. They are not guessing. They have learned this craft in blood since 1941, and now they practice it like an industrial skill dot inside the pocket. Command falls to men who are used to improvisation. They cannot hold everything, so they begin to shape the pocket itself, withdrawing from exposed salients, shortening the perimeter, concentrating strength. The trap force begins to walk south and west, dragging its perimeter along with it, because staying where it is would mean being crushed where it stands. Every movement is paid for. Pulling back from one village means fighting for the next. Abandoning one ridge means being shelled on the road to another dot outside. The problem lands on the desk of Field Marshal Erich von Manstein. He is not a man of slogans. He is a man of operations, of timing, of movement. He looks at the map and sees a truth that is obvious to anyone who has commanded formations in the field. The pocket will not survive if it is forced to wait for perfect conditions. Perfect conditions do not exist. There is only a window narrow, ugly, a real where a breakout and a relief thrust might meet, and there is another truth, equally obvious and far more dangerous. He does not fully control his own war. By early 1944, the German command system has become a cage. Hitler's orders hardened into a creed: hold ground, no retreats, no withdrawals without permission. Turn every operational necessity into a question of will. That creed has destroyed German armies before. It will destroy more. Manstein has argued against it, not out of mercy, but out of arithmetic. If you hold in the wrong place, you are surrounded. If you are surrounded, you lose not territory, but an army. Territory can be retaken. An annihilated army cannot dot around Korsun. The conflict becomes immediate. Manstein wants freedom to shift armor, to abandon some ground to save formations, to order a breakout when the time is right. Hitler wants declarations. He wants the pocket held, as if a pocket can be held by orders alone, as if the Soviets will pause because a staff in Berlin has decided the pocket must remain on the map. While that argument burns at the top, the pocket bleeds at the bottom. Supplies become a daily crisis. The Luftwaffe attempts to keep the trap force alive with airdrops and landings when possible. But air supply is a cruel bargain. It depends on weather, aircraft, airfields, and time. Bad visibility means no drop. Soviet fighters and anti-aircraft guns mean losses, even when supplies arrive. They do not arrive in the right place or the right proportion. A battalion might get bread, but no ammunition. Another might get ammunition, but no medical supplies. A drop can land in Soviet lines. Parachutes can tangle in trees. Shells can ignite crates. A pocket can be kept alive, briefly, but it cannot be made comfortable. And it cannot be made strong again. Meanwhile, Soviet artillery does what artillery always does to a shrinking perimeter. It makes every position smaller than it already is. Dugouts collapse. Field kitchens are destroyed. Telephone lines are cut. Horses panic and bolt. Wounded men scream in aid stations that are themselves under fire. In such conditions, discipline becomes something commanders must actively manufacture, hour by hour, with harsh words and exhausted examples. The Soviets also apply psychological pressure. Surrender offers appear. Loudspeakers and leaflets promise life. The trapped Germans understand what surrender means for them, and they also understand what staying means. The pocket becomes a pressure chamber where every man is forced to contemplate two fears, captivity or extinction. Some will choose one. Most will end up with a third outcome, breaking out in fragments, half alive, half dead, and never whole again. Manstein organizes a relief attempt. He gathers armored formations, whatever can be scraped together, and orders them to drive east, toward the pocket. But those formations are not the sleek spearheads of 1940. They are tired, under strength, short of fuel, worn down by constant fighting and poor roads. Their tanks break down. Their columns stretch and compress like an accordion. A few kilometers can take a day, and the Soviets, anticipating relief, have built defenses that punish predictable movement. Anti-tank zones, mine approaches, infantry with anti-tank weapons. In villages, artillery that slams crossroads. The relief force begins to push anyway. It advances into a landscape that seems designed to kill armored momentum. Rivers and streams cut the routes. Bridges are destroyed. Engineers work under fire. Tanks in half-tracks slide in thawing mud, bogging to their bellies. When the ground is frozen, it is hard but slick. When it thaws, it becomes glue. Each pause becomes an opportunity for Soviet counterattacks on the flanks. Each village becomes a fight because leaving an enemy garrison behind is an invitation to be cut off. At moments, the relief looks close enough to touch. The distance between the pocket and relief shrinks to a few dozen kilometers, then less. Rumors in the pocket spread like wildfire. Our tanks are near. Men stand on ridges and stare west, imagining engines in the distance. Commanders cling to these rumors because hope is itself a form of ammunition, but hope does not break Soviet rings. The outer ring is reinforced. Soviet tanks and rifle units shift to meet the relief. The relief force is forced to fight not only forward, but sideways, constantly protecting itself from being enveloped. It becomes a brutal contest of attrition and positioning, and time is the weapon the Soviets wield best. Every day that passes, the pocket consumes its remaining strength. This is where the key decision forms. Manstein understands that if the trapped force waits for the relief to open a clean corridor, it will wait until it dies. The relief can get close. It can punch a bridge head, but a corridor that remains open wide enough, long enough, under Soviet fire, is not guaranteed. So the pocket must move. It must break out toward the relief, using the relief's pressure as a distraction and a magnet, but not depending on the relief to do everything. The trouble is that ordering a breakout means admitting the pocket cannot be held, and that is exactly what Hitler refuses to admit. If Manstein follows the command ritual, he delays. If he delays, he kills his own men by obedience. So he chooses the other kind of responsibility, the kind that cannot hide behind paperwork. He orders the breakout, not as a theatrical gesture, not as a last stand, but as a cold operational necessity. He understands that he will be blamed if it fails and questioned if it succeeds. But he also understands that a commander's first duty, in war's brutal logic, is to preserve fighting power. Men who are dead are not fighting power. Men who surrender in mass are not fighting power. Men who break out even battered, even weaponless, are still something inside the pocket. The breakout order triggers a frantic preparation. It is not a neat assembly. It is a collapsing organization trying to concentrate itself for one final punch. Units are told what to destroy, what to carry, what to abandon. Heavy guns that cannot be moved are spiked or blown. Vehicles without fuel are burned. Records are destroyed. Wounded men who can be moved are loaded onto carts. Wounded men who cannot be moved face the most awful conversations of the war. Promises that someone will return. Lies that feel like mercy, prayers spoken quickly because there is no time. Men check weapons with fingers that can barely feel steel. They share last cigarettes. They tighten boot straps. They tape cloth around feet where leather has split. They stare at each other the way men stare when they know the next hours will decide whether they exist tomorrow. The pocket's axis of movement is toward the southwest, toward the area where the relief is closest. The goal is to smash through Soviet blocking positions, reach the river line near the relief, and cross into the zone where German armor can provide cover. The problem is that the Soviets know this too. The breakout routes are predictable because the terrain funnels movement. Rivers, villages, and ridges dictate where a mass of men can go, and the Soviets have artillery sighted on those funnels when the breakout begins. It is not a single wave with flags and music. It is a mass, a desperate, sprawling column of thousands. Infantry units in front, the mixed groups artillerymen without guns, engineers, signals troops, clerks carrying rifles, wounded men supported between the comrades, wagons creaking under weight, horses stumbling, staff officers trying to impose order on something that resists order by its nature. Soviet artillery opens. Shells fall into the column like a sick rain. Men dive into ditches. Horses scream and tear free. Wagons overturn. The column bunches, then spreads, then bunches again. Machine guns chatter from tree lines. Tracer rounds cut across open ground. In the dark, flares burst overhead and turn the snow into a ghostly stage where every moving figure becomes a target. The breakout becomes a series of local fights. A battalion charges a village, clears it house by house, then is hit by a counterattack and must fight again. A company tries to cross a field and is cut down by fire from a ridge. A group of men slips through a gap only to run into mines. Each success creates a new obstacle. Each obstacle costs minutes, and minutes are life. One of the most lethal aspects of such a breakout is that it is not only the enemy that kills you, it is the environment. Thawing ground swallows boots. Men sink to their ankles, then their calves. Weapons jam with mud. Exhaustion turns simple decisions into confusion. A man who would have held position under fire a month earlier now runs because his brain is empty from hunger and sleeplessness. And then there is the river. The Niloy Tikich and the surrounding streams and low ground become the final barrier between escape and captivity. In winter, a river can be a hard road of ice or a grave. In mid-February, the ice is unreliable. The banks are slick. The approaches are open. Under fire, the crossing becomes chaos. Men crowd toward crossing points because open water funnels them just like roads do. The crowd becomes a target. Artillery strikes the banks. Bullets stitch the surface. Men fall into water and vanish, dragged down by packs and weapons. Comrades reach for them and are pulled in two. Some crawl out on the far side and collapse, shaking uncontrollably, unable to hold a rifle. Others die silently because their lungs season cold water and there is no time for rescue. In such moments, the idea of an army is revealed as fragile. An army is discipline, supply, command, cohesion. Under river fire at night, those things can dissolve. And what remains is humanity in its rawest form: fear, stubbornness, instinct, and sometimes the strange calm that appears when a man decides he will either cross or he will die trying. Some groups make it. They break through in clusters, reach the zone where German armor is operating, and are pulled behind cover. German tank crews and infantrymen see them appear from the darkness like ghosts, men without helmets, men without rifles, men bleeding, men carrying comrades, men with eyes that look older than their faces. They are alive, but the pocket has torn something out of them. Other groups do not make it. They are cut off short of the river. They are surrounded. They surrender. Some fight until they are wiped out. The fields and gullies between the pocket and relief become scattered graves. In daylight, the snow is marked by dark tracks where bodies lie in rows, evidence of machine gun fire that swept the line across open ground. The exact numbers will always be argued. Encirclements create statistical fog. Units lose records. Men vanish and reappear days later. Some are counted as dead and return. Some are counted as alive and never returned. But the shape of the outcome is clear: A significant portion escapes, and a significant portion does not. The pocket is not cleanly annihilated, but it is shattered. The commander inside the pocket, Stemmerman, is killed during the breakout. His death is not a romantic detail. It is a sign that the escape was not a controlled withdrawal, but a violent tearing open of a ring. When the leader is killed in the movement is a storm. So, did Manstein save the army? If you define saving as winning, then no, the Germans lose the pocket as a position. They lose huge quantities of equipment. They suffer enormous casualties. They are pushed back again. But if you define saving as preventing total destruction, then yes. The breakout ordered in time turns a potential annihilation into a costly escape for many. It preserves remnants. It prevents a complete collapse of fighting power in that sector. It keeps men alive who would have died or surrendered en masse if they had waited until the pocket was squeezed to the last village and the last shell. And that is the brutal difference between a commander who acts and a commander who obeys when obedience becomes suicide. This is the reason the Korsun-Cherkasy battle is remembered not only as a Soviet operational success, but as a German command drama. It is not just tanks and rivers. It is the tension between a distant political will and a local military reality. It is the argument, written in blood, about whether a commander is responsible to an order or to the men who must carry that order into gunfire. In a documentary narrative, the emotional core is the moment when time runs out, when the relief is close, but not close enough, when the pocket is holding, but not holding for long, when every hour of delay turns wounded men into dead men, when the commander realizes that waiting for permission is another way of ordering the pocket to die politely. That night, the pocket moves thousands of men, half fed, half frozen, and fully aware that they are walking into a corridor of fire. Step out of their shrinking defenses and go forward because there is nowhere else to go. Some will cross the river and live, some will not. But the decision to break out rather than to remain and be crushed creates at least the possibility of survival. Without that decision, survival becomes a myth. Afterward, the front continues to retreat. The Soviets keep pushing west. The war does not pause to commemorate the pocket. The men who escape do not feel like heroes. They feel like survivors. They carry the memory of the river, the flares, the screaming horses, the overturned wagons, the wounded left behind. The moment when their unit became a crowd and their crowd became a target, and somewhere behind the lines, in headquarters rooms where maps are still clean, someone can still pretend that war is controlled by lines and arrows. But the men who walked out of Korsun know a different truth. When a pocket closes, the only thing that matters is time, and the only mercy time offers is a narrow window where action, however desperate, can still keep an army from vanishing.